Hello and welcome to this video and to May's book review. I am slowly falling apart as a human being, so I need to multitask while I do this book review because I have an infected thumb and the internet tells me I need to soak it in warm water, so we're going to be doing that. So I may look a bit weird while I'm doing this, amongst other things that's going on in my body at the moment. So May's reading went really well. I read 10 books this month, so there's a lot to go through and I'm hoping not to keep you for too long. But you know, I like to ramble. So I read 10 books this month, which meant I actually completed the spring reading challenge that I've been doing over the last 3 months. It's the first time I have ever completed one of those and I'm very proud of myself for doing so. Yes, I did utilise some shorter books to manage it, but I did it and that's the main thing. Also, no books were bought this month, so go me. So without further ado, let's jump into the books that I read this month. Just gonna soak my thumb, make sure this water isn't too hot. Might be a bit warm still. So the first book that I read was actually my book club pick, and that was Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang. I think I've got the initials right there. And I gave this book 4 stars, and it was to match the prompt book over 400 pages. So in this is a, I suppose, like dark academia fantasy maybe? And we're following our main character, who I called Skiona, but I don't think that's how the name is pronounced in the audiobook. But that's what I called her. She is the first female to reach this like higher level of, what did they call them? The highest, not the highest, but the like next highest level of this magic system. And she's the first woman to do it. So it's following that. But by doing that, she then unearths the dark realities of her society. So I really enjoyed the first half of this book. Thought it was fantastic. Was really into it. We're in this academic setting. All of the like men in that are a bit against her being there, so they're doing everything to put barriers in her way, and she's still overcoming them and then achieves these like massive things. So they give her an assistant, but is really like the cleaner, but because he's like the lesser society member, they don't actually factor in that he's actually pretty good at all of this. So you're following their relationship, you're following her making these discoveries and all of that kind of thing, and I really enjoyed that first half. The second half I found a little bit more convoluted. I still liked it, but there were parts of it that I didn't enjoy quite as much, I suppose is what I want to say. I just found it a bit more convoluted, and she cried an awful lot in that second half, which seemed a little out of character from the first half. I'd say the way I read it, Skiona seemed a little autism coded. It's never mentioned or anything like that, but that's sort of the aspect I got, sort of not understanding people's emotions and all of that kind of thing. I liked the magic system, and also the fact that it was done in an academic setting and she had to get her assistant up to speed meant that they could just info dump all of this magic system, and that really worked for me because I always find in fantasy books that that's the bit that I struggle with most, is actually understanding it and keeping up with it and all of that kind of thing. Because of that info dump, that wasn't the case with this one. But it didn't feel info dumpy as such because it was an academic setting and that's sort of what happened. To go back to sort of the second half of it, I think part of the reason why I struggle with it was the pacing. I found it a little bit stop-starty at points, and I could have really done with an epilogue, but I also understand why they didn't. I also kind of understand why they tried to put a romantic element into it, but for me, and I was in the minority at book club who felt like this, but for me I found that the romance was a bit underbaked and a bit shoehorned in because the author was like, oh well, I better have some sort of romance in there. I didn't think the romance was completely necessary. I think we could have got to the same aspects and levels just with them having a friendship. Why is it whenever I come to film these, I always end up having a coughing fit and then looking like I'm crying halfway through? Blood Over Brighthaven, I did enjoy it. I thought it was a very good book. It's one of the better book club books we've had in a long time. Certainly one of the better fantasy books we've had for book club in a very long time. And I also appreciate that it's a standalone and not part of a series. So yeah, if it's one that you've been eyeing up and it sounds interesting to you, I would recommend. I did enjoy. So that was Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang. And the first of many that is on my Kindle. Now my memory card is getting full, so I need to delete some clips, so hang on 1 second. Alright, the next book that I read, and it was actually my favourite book of the month, and was physical, was The Favourites by Layne Fargo. So I gave this one 4.5 stars and matched it to the prompt for retelling, because this is a Wuthering Heights retelling. So in this we are following Kat and Heath. They meet as teenagers in the ice rink, and then we're following their story as they're trying to become, you know, Olympic gold medalists in the free dance version of ice skating. Now I got this for my birthday, which is January. I really wish I read it during the Winter Olympics. I think that would have just enhanced the reading experience of it, and I still enjoyed this book. So to me this says perfect for fans of Daisy Jones and the Six. I would agree, there are very much elements of Daisy Jones and the Six in this, obviously completely different subject matter. Layne Fargo's writing style is similar to Taylor Jenkins Reid. I wouldn't say it's quite as good, but it is similar. And there are snippets in between chapters of like documentary interview formats, so there definitely is a Daisy Jones and the Six element to this. However, the relationship in this is so toxic and messy and infuriating, but also so compelling at the same time. It just kept me reading. It's quite a chunky book, and I was on a reasonably tight time frame to get this finished before we went on holiday, and I just kept wanting to read it, which is also a good sign of a book for me. The world of ice dance is fascinating. I didn't know a lot about it. Getting a better understanding of that was very interesting, and not one that I've read before. I've not even done like many hockey romances or anything like that, so often they're linked to an ice skater or whatever in those things. So that was really interesting for me, and just all the different perspectives of an event was really interesting. So the majority of this book is told from Kat's point of view, so a lot of it is roughly from Kat's point of view, but then obviously we get the interspersed sort of interview parts showing other people's perception of the same event. I love it. I love it. So far this is my favourite book of the year, on par at least with the Taylor Jenkins Reid that I read last month, but I think I'd probably think about this one a bit more just because of how volatile and messed up the relationship is in it. Again, if it's one that you've been eyeing up or you have it on your TBR or anything, highly recommend. I enjoyed it a lot and I had it for my retelling prompt. So there is The Favourites by Layne Fargo. And now we go into a long list of Kindle reads and audiobooks. I have really enjoyed having a Kindle book going, as I said I think last month, just for having like in between meetings, or an option to read if I don't want to watch Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, or you know, having it there for the like 5 minutes from me coming in from Jeff's walk to them coming back from work and nursery. So the book that I was doing that mainly with for the first part of the month was The Long Midnight of Barney Thomson. So this one matched the prompt of my oldest book. There's one later on for the prompt of shortest book. This could have gone for either, because at the time it was both the shortest and the oldest on my TBR. So I got this book for free when I first got my Kindle, like Christmas 2012. We're not going to go into the whole new Kindle rules of things because that's angered me. So I have had it on my Kindle for an awfully long time. So it was time that I got round to reading it. In the end I gave this one 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it, but it was a bit odd. It's hard to sort of put it into a genre. It's definitely... well, it's a mystery, but it's also a comedy of errors, but it's also just a bit weird. So in this, we're following a few characters. We've got the perspective of a couple of people, but the main one is Barney Thomson, and he is a barber. Things aren't going quite so well for him, and then there are some murders, and there's a serial killer going on. That's all I'm really gonna tell you, because I didn't know anything going into this book, and I think that probably bumped up the enjoyment slightly for me, because I didn't expect it to go where it did. I would say at the beginning I wasn't too keen. It's definitely a book that grew on me as I went through it and as I got to know the characters a bit more. Not that I ever particularly liked many other characters, because I also didn't really understand why we had different points of view and how they were all relating and why they were telling me information about stuff that didn't seem relevant at the time but does become relevant. It is completely absurd though. The whole thing is completely absurd. It has a lot of dark humour in it, so if that's not your thing, maybe steer well clear. Sorry if I keep looking down, I just keep checking my thumb. I know they're barbers, but for me, I found there was way too much sport chat in it. Part of the storyline is that like Barney isn't into like football and that kind of thing, but he's trying to pretend so that people come to his chair and stuff, and the barbers. It's not really giving you any spoilers of anything that, but that whole part of it, far too much sport chat for me. So as I said, in the end I gave it 3.5 stars. It was enjoyable, I did like it. Probably will think about it a little bit just because of how odd it was, but other than that, it was fine for a free book. I understand why I haven't read it for many a year, but hey, there we go. So that's The Long Midnight of Barney Thomson. At the same time of that, I also had an audiobook going, so I was doing my next read with Jane Austen, and I read Persuasion, and I'm going to offend all the Jane Austen fans out there now, but I gave it 2 stars. This is probably my least favourite of all of the Austens that I've listened to now. I don't know whether that's because I keep listening to the audiobooks that have the same narrator, so the narrator is called Nadia May. I mean, she doesn't do a bad job, but I think I mentioned it again in another review. She uses the same voices, so I'm getting a little lost with what book I'm on at the point, and I have to say Jane Austen doesn't hold my attention as well as some other audiobooks I've listened to. So it's very easy for me to drift, which then makes it harder for me to follow it. For the prompt that I linked this to was a book beginning with the letters of spring, so S-P-R-I-N or G. I don't know whether it's because of the time, again, of the month that I listened to it either, as to why it didn't capture me at all. We were obviously in the run-up to our holidays, so there was a lot going on in my head. They also announced a load of the stuff for our restructure at work, so I finally had some confirmation about my job, but obviously that has sparked some thoughts as well. So all of that stuff was going on in the background to me listening to it as well, so I don't know whether that played a part, but I found this story just was a list of names and where they'd been, rather than any like story. There didn't feel like much of a narrative arc to it, which there have been in the other Jane Austens. This one just didn't seem to have that, and that's partly why I drifted so much, because I got bored so quickly. And I will say that the Jane Austens just seem quite formulaic, which is fine. I don't mind a formulaic book, but because I'm listening to them essentially once a month is working out as, I'm noticing it quite a lot. Not my favourite. Apologies to the Jane Austen fans. The next book that I read was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This was to read a book with multiple POVs, points of view, and again I gave this one 3.5 stars. This is essentially a remote setting murder mystery. We are on a island, a very small island off island, that's hit by a storm during a wedding. Magazine owner and an actor, or no, he's not an actor, he's like a Bear Grylls kind of guy, and we get the points of view of the bride, the best man, the bridesmaid, the wedding planner and the +1, and it's them the day before the wedding and obviously all of the events that unfold during that time. Again, I enjoyed my time reading this. I thought it was well done and well written. I just found it kind of predictable. A lot of the twists and turns that the book take, I'd guessed some time ago. So for a thriller, it wasn't particularly thrilling, but as a book to read, it was enjoyable, and I wouldn't be adverse to reading any other Lucy Foley, but I wouldn't go in expecting it to like shock me at any point. What I did find though, and this is unusual, is that I liked all of the points of view. I wasn't like eager to get back to somebody or leave somebody. I enjoyed all of the stories and how they interlinked and that kind of stuff, and I liked the remote setting and how that played into the story as well. I mean, I often enjoy a remote setting. I think they work well. I mean, and then There Were None is like one of my favourite books, so that's like the first of the kind, so I do like them, but I found that there was sort of not quite as much suspense in this one as there has been in other remote setting thrillers that I've read. It was more secrets than shocks, I suppose. So yeah, I enjoyed it, but I feel it's going to be a bit forgettable. It's going to sort of just blend into thrillers that I've read. Like the one by Shari Lapina and this one are gonna merge in my head at some point, and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, liked it. It was fun to read on holiday as well, but not one that's going to have left a lasting impression on me. So that was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. Then the next book that I read, sorry it is going to be like this a lot, is The Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue. This one was to read a book by an Irish author. I didn't have many options, to be honest, but this has been on my Kindle for a little while, and one that I've been interested to read, and again one that what Victoria read, who is the host of the reading challenge, talks about a lot, and this is sort of the one that put me onto this book, so it always feels fitting to read one of her recommendations in her own reading challenge, if that makes sense. And I enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. We are following, oh, what's her name? Oh, that's frustrating, I didn't write it down. No, I've completely forgotten the main character's name. But anyway, she is a midwife. She's working in an Irish hospital between the wars during the flu pandemic of 1918, I want to say. I could have been completely wrong on that one. And we're following, I think it's only like 3 days on that ward. The writing style of it and the way that it's put together is just, I really enjoyed it. The birth scenes in particular were quite intense, and having, I mean, it's probably not that recently in the grand scheme of things, my child's too, but having recently given birth, it did bring back like the feelings of it and the memories of it and that kind of stuff. So I could really, really relate to what was going into those ones, and I thought they were very, very well written for birth scenes in fiction and that kind of stuff. I also enjoyed the like social commentary of the time, so the different like propaganda stuff that they're saying about the flu pandemic, also the sort of thoughts on people that went to war or didn't come to war, or the sort of disabilities that they came back with and how those were in hierarchy, and the difference between the well-off and the not well-off, and that kind of stuff. All of that was really interesting as well. It's definitely a time period that I didn't really know anything about, so it opened my eyes to a lot of it. What I find interesting though is that the book was published in 2020 and it's about a flu pandemic. I don't know whether that would have helped or hindered it, but I just found that an interesting fact about how the two things sort of collided, because obviously when she was writing it there wouldn't have been the flu pandemic, but there we go. There is a sapphic element to this book, which I'm not sure, was it needed? I don't know. I mean, I liked it, but I don't know whether it was needed. Maybe I'm just not quite as into romance in other styles, other genres anymore. I don't know. There was that element, which was fine. And I found that the ending was a bit rushed. For the way that Emma Donoghue wrote various other scenes and stuff like that, I found that the ending of it, I think she could have put a bit more time into it. It also wasn't a particularly long book. It was under 300 pages, I think, so she definitely had the space to be able to write a little bit more for the ending to make it a bit more, I don't know, poignant, heart-wrenching. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I found it a little bit rushed. Also, for people that don't like long chapters, this may not be for you, because it's just 4 long chapters. So it is hard to find a spot to stop. I mean, I just stopped at the end of a sentence and hoped that that made logical sense. It didn't seem to hinder me, but also I only read it in like 3-4 days anyway. So I was largely reading one of the chapters a day, so again it didn't impact my reading too much, but I know if I was not on holiday reading the book, that would have frustrated me a bit more. So yeah, really enjoyed the book. Definitely recommend it if you're interested in it and in that time period or anything like that. But there are a few things that I would have changed about it. So yeah, 4 stars for The Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue. We're nearly there, 3 more to go. The next book would, so the prompt, match my outfit. At the time I was picking, I was wearing a very blue bikini. So I picked Ice Planet Barbarians because the cover of that is very blue, and I gave this 3 stars. Ice Planet Barbarians, for those of you who do not know, is essentially alien smut. Basically, a load of women are abducted by aliens, and that spaceship then crashes in this planet where there are big blue aliens, and then romance ensues from there. I would say categorically it's probably bad, but it was fun. Despite the fact that, yeah, it's absurd and not always the best written, it was also enjoyable, and there was more story to it than I imagined going into it. So I won't be continuing with the series because I think there's about 12 of them. I don't know how you can stretch it out for that long, but I'm glad I gave it a go. It was funny at points, and if you just ignored all of the coincidences and the convenient nature of it all, like the fact that, you know, the aliens had anatomy that would work with humans. Silly, but fun at the same time. So that was Ice Planet Barbarians, to match my outfit. The following book I listened to it really quickly, and I don't tend to listen to audiobooks that quickly. But this was random pick. I decided just to go into my library app, as I have done in the past, see what's available, and they had The Vacation by John Marrs, so I picked that one up because I do enjoy a John Marrs book. And I gave this one 4 stars. This is probably, I've read 6 John Marrs books, so in my list of rankings this one probably comes in at 4th. It was, as I would sort of expect, twisty, turny, lots of characters, and that kind of thing. In this one we are in a backpacking hostel in Venice Beach in LA, and we're following the lives of lots of people, and I would say he actually encapsulates the experience of the backpacker quite well, that sort of transient friendships and all of that kind of stuff, and just some of the other stuff that goes on when you're backpacking, except for the murder part of it. I don't remember there being any murders when I did it in Australia, but yeah, I think he did that well. It's the first time I've listened to a John Marrs book. Normally I read them, so I found it a little bit more difficult to get to grips with some of the characters. I think that's just because obviously if I'm reading it I can give them my own image and voice and stuff, so it helps distinguish. Also I see their name and all of that kind of stuff, so I think because I was listening to it not all the voices were quite as distinct as others, so it made it a little harder to keep on track of who was who and what their stories were. But that's only like a real minor thought on it. Like I followed it perfectly. It's just every now and again there was a who's that again? So there was that one. My bowl of water's got cold now, so I think I should probably take my thumbs out. Again with the guest list, like Lucy Foley, I didn't find this one was particularly shocking. I had kind of figured out some of it. Maybe I've just read lots of this style now, so I don't find them as shocking. But I did like the twists, and I did like where the book was taken and how things interlinked again and all of that kind of stuff. And I just had to keep listening. It was one of those, and I haven't had it with an audiobook for a little while, where I just wanted to listen to my audiobook and sort of ignore all the other books that I had. But I have certain points where I can listen to an audiobook, so that wasn't always the place, but I just wanted to listen to it and see what happened. So it was fast paced and very enjoyable. One thing I really did like about this one was the fact that we had a then and now situation. So we got obviously what was happening in the hostel at that present time, but also flashbacks to relevant points in their pasts that led them to make the decisions that they're making in the present. And I appreciated that sort of character development and understanding of our characters. So yeah, enjoyed this one a lot. Always happy to pick up a John Marrs book. I think this is from 2015, so it's sort of one of his backlist, but definitely one that I would recommend, let's say. The one will always be my favourite, but this one was pretty good. It was up there. So yeah, that was The Vacation by John Marrs. Oh, I lied, we have 2 more books. I forgot about Girl in Tears by Jacqueline. So this was for the prompt to reread. As you know, I've been going through this series, so that this month, in fact, because I'm filming in June, I can read the adult sequel to them. So like all the others, I gave this one 3.5. This is probably in ranking of order like my second favourite out of the 4. I just think that the storyline in this was more to my taste. And I also didn't remember this one at all. I know I've said this in all of them, but the writing style, I don't know. I'm really hoping the adult one is different. But the writing style is so juvenile for the age range that our characters are and that she's hoping we'll read it. I just don't think it works. With an adult brain, this book is kind of ridiculous. But I did enjoy the like teen drama. I found it quite plausible and believable. So if I was reading it at that age, I wouldn't think it was a bit nuts and ridiculous. But there we go. One thing I will say, I think again I've said this with most of them, the ending is too rushed. There needed to be a lot more grovelling from some of our characters because of events that happen in this book. I feel the forgiveness arc from Ellie was a bit too quick. So yeah, finished the old books, get to read the next one this month, and then complete the Girls series once again. So it was Girls in Tears by Jacqueline. And now we're on to the last book, and that was The Ruby Girls by Jacamez. I think I've got that right. She puts it in her Amazon like author bio how to pronounce it, and I have looked at it a few times and I can't remember. So I'm hoping I got that one right, I don't know. As I said, this one is the prompt for the shortest book. It could have also been the oldest book. I could have swapped those two round. It didn't really matter. Again, this is another one that I got for free when I first got my Kindle way back in 2012, but I've just never read. This is also one of the lowest rated books I have on my TBR, so at some point I was planning on reading all like the lowest rated or the highest rated books on my TBR. I doubt I'm going to get to that now because I've got other plans for my reading this year. Maybe I'll do it next year now. So I wrote down all the ratings and this was one of the lowest. And I'm not surprised why, because I gave it 2.5 stars. So in this we are following a group of, we'll call them friends because it's going to be the easiest word. So they're meeting for a school reunion to celebrate their 40th birthday. However, they haven't seen each other for like 20 years. None of them really want to attend, but they all end up doing it anyway. And I don't think anyone's going to read this book, so I'm going to give you a load of spoilers. If you're not interested in spoilers, thank you for watching this video and feel free to turn off now. If you don't mind a spoiler for this book, keep watching. So yeah, basically they're at this reunion, they don't want to go. They all sort of do something that they like in the morning and happen to meet a guy. And all of those men are involved in a wedding that's also happening in the same place that they're having a reunion. And it's farcical. It's never going to happen. You've really got to suspend disbelief for this one. Or suspend belief. I never know which way around I'm supposed to say that. So then they obviously go to this reunion, tell a load of lies, and then retract it, and then end up at this wedding. I've basically given you the whole book. You don't need to read it now. I wouldn't really recommend that you do read it, because you read the same thing over and over again because it's from the point of view of all of these women, and I think there's about 7 or 8 of them, and you basically read the same sentences every single chapter. It is so repetitive. I actually think the story could have been quite fun and could have worked quite well, but it didn't with the way that this was written. I mean, it's inoffensive and it was reasonably quick to read, but the plot line is not plausible, which I'm fine with if you make it readable, but it was so repetitive that it just frustrated me at times. I gave it 2.5 because actually there were redeeming factors to it. I did quite like some of the characters. I did like how some of them met and kind of the situations and things like that. But it was just repetitive, and I reckon... Well, I wrote down in my notes that it's forgettable. I actually don't think it will be forgettable because of how much I got frustrated with the nature of how it was written. I probably wouldn't bother with it, but that's my own personal opinion. So there you go. Here is a mammoth May reading wrap up. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. If you've got any comments about the books that I've read or the ones that you can see on this shelf, because this is my TBR, drop them in the comments below and I will get back to you when I can. And I say thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!